This is not a problem. So early morning, just down the base of Mount Dandenong, and we'll be getting a precision driver in this, and more importantly, a mini enthusiast is what he's listed as, but basically a guy who's owned lots of minis. I know he's excited to get in it, but I'm excited to see what he thinks. Of course, we've put more power in, but the important thing is, have we maintained the handling, the feel? And that's the big thing. And it's the intangible, unquantifiable thing. Does it still feel like the original car? Does it still have that spirit and that fun? And can it be appreciated by someone who's been driving these cars for 30 or 40 years? But first, let's go back in time, finish the electrification, and tell you the story of this particular car. This car is a 1996 model, and while that seems perhaps newer than you'd expect, Minis have a interesting and complicated history, and long, just like a lot of British cars do, where the car that was originally released in the late 50s really continued almost exactly the same up until 1999, 2000. So this model was originally released in Japan and imported to Australia, actually. And while we've changed some things to make it look a bit more like a classic, particularly the dash, this had originally gauges here, and we've moved it to the central style like the 60s ones. It's otherwise the same car underneath, of course, for the part where it's got an electric motor and gearbox and batteries and all of those things, which I'll talk about. In final install of the Mini, using our full Mini kit, so that's front and back, 70 kilowatt Zonic motor, single reduction gear with a 19 kilowatt hour battery pack that all fits in on from an original subframe into the engine bay, and then also a rear battery pack where the charger and the DC-DC lives as well. This is all the wiring that's going on, and some complex nut tightening. There's always some challenging, whether it's a Mini or a Land Rover, there's always some tricky nuts and bolts, even from factory. Not even if it was an EV conversion, there's always something odd. So that's the rear battery pack in, the charger in, sound deadening happening inside the car, because of course without that engine noise you hear a lot of other things. So that cuts down on the tyre noise, the wind noise, the road noise, and even the noise that the electric motor and gearbox are going to make. So they're rigging the Mini with a bunch of GoPros on the outside so that we can get the tracking shot underneath, those close-ups of the wheels, all those cool angles attached to the car. This is now when our Mini enthusiast, also called David, will have a drive. So the stuff you've seen before, that's actually been one of our precision drivers doing that work so that he can coordinate with the camera team and be on the microphone and everything. But this is the bit we're waiting for, is our man waiting right there, who's actually going to have a drive.
I'm your probably typical middle-aged person who is a little bit sceptical about these electric cars. My name is David McAdam. I've been driving Minis for 49 years. I've been doing club motorsport now for some 40 and a bit years. I've had more Minis than I can count. I just love driving them because they're so intuitive.
Are you excited?
I am excited. Any Mini that's got more horsepower than a normal one's probably got to be a bit of fun, I'd think.
Do you have any expectations of what it'll be like?
No, I've tried to clear my head of any expectations just to see what it's going to bring to me.
Where do you think we might have got it wrong?
You want to take this for a spin? Yeah, take it for a spin.
That's a tough one. I'd like to see it on 10-inch wheels.
And how does that change the feel of the car?
You'd think it would actually turn a little bit better on 10-inch wheels. I think 12-inch wheels will slow down how it turns. I'm not sure yet. The other thing I was impressed with, you haven't put a lot of weight in the car.
I know you're kind of teasing what we're doing with electrification here, but it's not such a silly comment because EVs are heavy as a general rule. They're heavier than a normal car. But the thing is, they don't have to be. This is the front assembly that's inside the Mini. So the battery box, the radiator, the motor under there, and the gearbox. And it is just not heavy. Okay, being silly. I don't even lift. Look at my stick arms, right? This is a mock-up. There's no batteries in here. And the motor is a 3D print. But the reality is that the whole system ends up being only, well, actually the same weight. In fact, a little bit lighter, like about 20 kilos lighter than the original Mini was. So a small car doesn't need to be heavy just because it's electric. The challenge is that there's this diminishing returns where you want to add range, so you add more battery. You've made a heavier car, so you need more battery again, and it keeps exponentially growing. And of course, an EV wants to, they're an expensive car, so there's all the soundproofing, all the other features, all the other tech, all those other things that you get with a luxury car. Then you're adding battery. So they become a heavy car, but what we try and do is really focus on that handling, that performance, the things that made the car special in the first place. If we were to make a Mini 3 times heavier, I don't know, that's being extreme, but the lightness is the key to that vehicle. So this has a Zonic 70 motor, and that's 70 kilowatts and 180 newton meters of torque. People, of course, put more power in Minis. The challenge is really getting that power to the ground. This is more than enough to accelerate this to, 7 seconds, actually a bit under, in the right mode, to 100 kilometers an hour or 60 miles an hour. And the challenge really is at the low end, we just can't get that power to the ground. And you can see people putting bigger motors in electric Minis and just doing burnouts all the time. With the right tune on this, or the wrong tune, let's call it, you can spin the tyres at almost any speed. But the key to what we want to build is a real car, a car that anyone can drive. And I've got this here now, what we'd call normal mode, for want of a better name, which isn't crazy. It's faster than most cars that most little hatchbacks is faster than any standard Mini ever was. But it delivers the power smoothly, controllably, predictably. The throttle pedal response is I guess it's not super responsive, it's just relaxed, let's call it. But we have other modes, like sport mode, which changes things a little bit too much. Changes things too much, let's call it. And you do not want to drive that way all the time, but that will keep pulling all the way up to, well, where we artificially limit the speed at about 140 kilometers an hour. In the engine bay, you can see the majority of the system. So the main battery pack, about 2/3 of the battery in here, the inverter for the motor, so taking the DC from the battery pack, spitting out the AC that goes down to the motor, which is tricky to see, but is below it in there, into the reduction box and then into the drive shafts. A lot of work by the team in the UK to fit this into this space. A space that was obviously small for its time, is very small now, and was never designed for battery packs. But we're able to lay out the modules in such a way that kind of wrap around the motor, wrap around the a new original subframe, and also leave space for things like the brake booster. So yes, this is a new booster into the original master cylinder, and then we have a vacuum pump that then runs and creates the vacuum for this. The brakes we've used a very soft compound, because the big thing that, it's almost the opposite to what you do in a performance vehicle, is that you're usually dealing with too much heat in the brakes, and so you want hard compounds that can survive a lot of heat and keep working when they're hot. With regen braking, we're not using the traditional brakes nearly as much. So regenerative power, the mass of the vehicle turns the motor into a generator, and then that slows you down electromechanically, rather than needing to clamp on brake force. So still good brakes, but designed to be and installed as very soft compounds, so that they're very sticky, because we're not so worried about them heating up, because so much of your braking is done by recouping energy rather than clamping on some pads around a steel disc. This is the filler for the cooling system, and the cooling system is running through the inverter and then the motor. You can see some of the silicon hoses that wrap around there into a very small little radiator down here. You can sort of see it through the grille, about that wide. We've got a single fan on it. The fan, constantly monitoring the temperature. The fan comes on when needed, which here in winter is never. But basically running a small coolant loop that keeps the motor sort of under 40 degrees, basically. Needs a very small amount of fluid, and this is really just it's just a filler point, just a high point, a header tank, rather than any expansion, because the fluid just never gets hot enough. The key to this conversion is really that packaging, that weight distribution that have made it feel just right. You know, in not so many words, that the heart and the soul of the Mini are in its handling and its feel. And we've found that with all the cars that we've worked on. It's not necessarily the engine. There is, of course, cars where the engine is the key part of why that car is special, or one of the key components. But so many cars, it's not that. There's something else. It's the whole package that does that. So if you can get the electric powertrain right, you can keep that feel. You can keep that soul, for want of a better word, in a car. And I think this has really done that. And so that packaging is key to that. A 19 kilowatt hour battery, which is small, but it keeps the car light, keeps it actually a little bit under the original weight. So it's about 600 kilos. That means that a little battery pack can take you a long way. This is Melbourne's steepest street, Ohio Street in Pascoe Vale. Just happens to be around the corner from my house. So look, this is what Google says anyway, that this is a 30-degree gradient, and that's the steepest in Melbourne. There's part of a group of 4 called the Gaffney 4 that are all very, very steep, and road cyclists come to really burn themselves out. It is a struggle to drive up and accelerate in a normal internal combustion car. You do that all the time because I live around here. But I thought it would be a really good test for this car, because it's a way for me to show the acceleration and the torque without having to go dangerous speeds and be on a track or anything like that. And it's a real world application of what can a little electric motor do when it's in a little car. Because this is a test, I'm not going to carry any momentum in. I'll start from a dead stop here and see what 70 kilowatts, 180 newton meters, and a single gear reduction can do going up this hill. Let me just wait for these cars, because I don't want anything blocking my progress. All right, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm losing traction. All right, this is not a problem. All right, maybe I need a steeper hill. That has no trouble with that at all. Okay, I didn't actually, as I said, I drive these hills. I'm usually in, normal mode. This is near my house. I'm driving as a respectable driver. Not doing that. All right, that's I thought it would be good. That's even better. Here in the boot, you can see the rest of the system, including the smaller of the 2 battery packs that lives in the depression that used to house the spare tyre, and the charger that's over there, which is where the original fuel tank used to be. On the other side, you've got the DC-DC converter, which takes the high voltage traction pack, so up to 400 volts, converts that down to 12 volts to power the rest of the, normal car systems. And under that little cover is a 12-volt battery, so sitting in its same little cradle that it used to sit in. All this bracketry that I can't show you completely, but basically picks up original mounting points. So bolts into the subframe here, and picks up seatbelt mounting points at the back, so there's no new holes drilled, there's no nothing to weld, nothing to cut. All the cabling running front to rear goes through where all the fuel lines used to go, and that's the same in the front too. It's all on a subframe. There is no new holes to drill. Everything bolts into original mounting locations on the vehicle. The big thing too with that battery pack means we maintain boot space. So in the rear, we've got a full usable space, the same basically luggage capacity as the original cars did. And for us, that's a big thing, is making sure that when we're making these cars better in every way we can. Now, fuel tank capacity aside, the idea is that we're not losing any utility. We're not making this car super heavy. We're not filling it with batteries. We're not taking away luggage space. You can still happily fit 4 people in. There's nothing in the cabin. It's a system that is, legal and compliant in any market in the world. We've done all the testing and simulation. What are you up to?
I'm looking at how the car's running. We don't have a instrument gauge in right here, but I'm just seeing all of the mode parameters and messages that the car is sending to itself, checking everything's okay.
What is it saying to itself?
Well, for instance, it says that it's in neutral right now, and I can change that. Advantage of a small car is you can press the brake while you're in the passenger seat. I've now put it in reverse or drive, changing that parameter there, changing whether I'm in sport mode or normal mode, whether the heater's on. We've got a motor temp of 17 degrees here, pretty low pack current of under an amp while we're just sitting here and it's powering itself.
The one thing electric conversion does not fix is the impediment of the headlighting on my hairdo. What can fix that is there's so many variants of mini seat base mounting brackets that can adjust that position. There's a little bit of movement and adjustment within the seat, but you basically change the bracketry and you can get it lower and further back and change the angle of the steering wheel and a whole bunch of other things. We have just left this completely stock. That is, I guess, up to the customer to want to do this. Being able to zip past a truck is, or a tram, is one of the key features of this. Driving this around, I live in sort of the inner northern suburbs of Melbourne. There are a lot of trams and tram lines and narrow road. You're always looking for an opportunity to be able to pass a tram, which are frequently stopping. And that can mean sort of sneaking and weaving through some bits because there'll always be a line of parked cars or something. So what you actually want is a city car with, let's call it pep. Just that ability to zip in between, dart around and overtake. There may have been no better car ever built for that task than a classic Mini from a handling point of view. Now it has that ability from a performance point of view, and not just raw performance, but ability to quickly accelerate.
I could do that all day. It is absolutely unbelievable.
How was it?
Awesome. It's fantastic. But the power delivery is just so smooth and linear, and the engine and drive line is just far in excess of what I thought it would be.
It's really fun. Like, it's just, the electric motor, it's just so predictable. Like, you just get used to it. And you're like, oh, anything I do with my foot, that happens to the car.
Yeah, it doesn't hiccup. There's no lag. There's just nail it, and it doesn't.
You can make wheels spin, and obviously in a little car, you can put a motor in, you can make the wheels spin, and you can make it just go, and that's fun, but is it livable? You need to live with the vehicle, and you need to use it like a real car. You need to use it like a race car, like a track car in certain, when we've been able to. But you also really just need to live with it. Drive to work in it, go to the shops in it, give other people the keys who have no idea and are not used to EVs, are not used to minis. How does this feel and how does it operate as a normal car? Now, big car companies, of course, can do, years of testing and validation and have very experienced people. But we're also lucky, both in the UK and here in Australia, to have some great experienced people too, and really be able to, I guess, be passionate about that drive experience that isn't just performance, that is low speed control, that is usability, and just how does it hold 100 k's an hour on the freeway happily. Who would have thought that my life would be just about making machines feel nice? But I think that that's a big factor from working and electrifying to being a great car and feeling balanced and something that you just want to get into every day. And I think what I really love about the Mini is that we can create something that is just supremely normally livable and just a great car to own, but then you can pull this knob and it turns into something else entirely. Where and just makes you smile every single time. I don't need that. That wakes you up. The window open and the cold air also wakes me up. But pulling out that sports mode dial every time.
The input of power was amazing. It was beyond what I thought it would be. Far beyond. Right down to the plug into the fuel caps, just beautiful.
Mini can push forward what it's always meant, that it's just that driving experience, and that needs to be part of our electric future as well.
It's just the gift that just keeps giving. You just keep pushing it, and it just keeps on. Yeah. Fantastic power.
Without putting it in sport mode.
That's without putting it in sport mode. I don't want to touch sport mode. I'm too old for sport mode.